Hello, welcome to the History Geek Teacher Vlog, episode number 5. Today we're talking about how to make a Google map from a spreadsheet. Hello, today's topic is Google Maps, specifically how to take data from a spreadsheet and make it into a Google map. Now we're going to walk through this step by step and then also talk a little bit about how you might use this in your classroom.
So first I need some data, and I'm going to get some earthquake data from the USGS site. They have a spreadsheet format site that has information about feeds on tornadoes from the past hour, past day, past 7 days. I would like to get a spreadsheet that has all of the earthquakes in the past 7 days that are 2.5 or greater. So I'm going to click on this link here, and it is going to ask me where I would like to save this file. I'm going to keep it named 2.5_week, and I'm going to put it in a file that I already have called earthquake data. I'm going to go ahead and save that, and it's going to save it as a CSV file, comma separated values. So now that I have my spreadsheet, I need to go to Google Maps so I can put the data onto my map. So I am at maps.google.com. I am over on the left-hand side looking at the hamburger. I'm going to pull down the hamburger, and it's going to give me some different choices. One is Your Places. So I'm going to click on Your Places, and it's going to show me things that have been labeled, things that have been saved, places that I visited, and then also any maps that I've created. So I'm going to click on Maps. And on the bottom, it's going to say Create Map. So I'm going to click on Create Map because I want to create a new map. So now we have a new Google map. It's called Untitled Map. It's always good to give it a title so you remember what it is. I'm going to click on the title up here, and I'm going to name this Earthquake Map, and then I'm going to put week next to it. Remember, we downloaded all of the 2+5 magnitude earthquakes from the past week, so that'll signify that it is from the past 7 days. Now, we want to import the data from that spreadsheet, so we're going to click on down here where it says Untitled Layer, and down below it's going to say Import. We are going to import a file. Now, we can import a variety of different files, CSV files, KML files. We'll talk about the different types of files later, but for right now, I want to select a file from my computer because I did save it on my desktop in a folder called Earthquake Data, and it is 2.5_week, and then notice it is a .csv file. So I'm going to click on Open, and it's going to take a second to upload that file. Now it's going to ask me what columns from the spreadsheet do we want to use to position our place marks on the map. So if it sees that it is latitude and longitude, it's labeled as latitude and longitude, it's automatically going to suggest those. It could also be a street address, it could be a city. The more specific the actual place mark will be. So for example, if you just had the name of a city, it's going to put that place mark just kind of roughly in the middle of that city. But we are talking about earthquakes, and it has a very specific latitude and longitude, so it is suggesting that we use those two different columns when we put it on our map. So I'm going to click Continue. The next question is going to say, what do you want to have appear when you hover over that place mark? It could be the time of the earthquake, the latitude, the longitude, the depth. I think probably the most logical would be magnitude. So I'm going to click on Magnitude and click Finish. So now Google Maps is going to do its magic. It's going to take just a little bit of time, and it is going to be importing a map that has all of those place marks on the map. So once we've imported our data onto the Google map, we have a pretty cool map. You can look up here and see that we have 283 place marks. So there's 283 earthquakes signified on the map that are all above 2.5, and these are all things that have happened within the last week. And you could definitely use this map with your students. You could have some discussions and talk about some of the various locations, and you can kind of start to see some of the clusters on where there's quite a few earthquakes within a small range of area. But there's a lot more you can do with this map. Now, if you want to click on an individual earthquake, so if we pick this one, for example, it will give us quite a bit of data, the time, the latitude, the longitude, talk about it's a 2.7 up here. It gives you a geographical place, Soda Springs, Idaho, 11 kilometers south of there. So it does give you information about each earthquake. But if I was using this in class with a geography class, for example, I would want to be able to do a little bit more with making each of the earthquakes show me visually where the strongest ones are and where the weaker ones are. So if I come over here, I can click on, right underneath the layer, I can click on where it says uniform style. And if I click on uniform style, I can tell that I can style it by a specific data column. So let's say that I want to make these look different according to the magnitude of the earthquake. I'm going to select magnitude down here, and it's going to give different colors to the different earthquakes. And it's kind of cool. It's going to be kind of colorful and gives you a little bit of variety, but there's not really any rhyme or reason to this. So when I click on that button again, now I'm going to say that I would like there to be a range. And on the ranges, you can select the variance in different types of levels of earthquakes that you want to display. So I'm going to pick 8, and I'm going to make it red because red's a little bit easier to see when we have so much water here. So when I click on those, and I'm going to zoom in on the map here just a little bit, so now you can tell, especially down here in the Pacific, there's quite a few earthquakes that have a darker shade of red, and it also tells you the number here. So I can see that there are 15 earthquakes that have happened in the last week that are between a 5.1 and a 5.9. So this gives you a little bit more information, but there's still some more we can do to make this even more valuable for a geography class. So we are currently viewing this map in what's called the base map. So it's a little bit of a physical map, also shows some political boundaries. But if you switch the view from a base map to a satellite map, now it really gets interesting for a geography class. Wow, so if you're talking about the Ring of Fire, you're talking about plate tectonics, you can definitely see the plates here. You can definitely see what's happening out here in the Pacific Ocean. You can see plate movement here. And then when you're looking at the base map, and I'll switch back to the base map here for a second, your students might see these earthquakes here, and a lot of them will probably know that this is Hawaii, but notice when you switch to the satellite map, it really gives you a little bit more information as far as maybe why this particular part of the Pacific is going to have earthquakes. So some really cool stuff you can do by just kind of changing a little bit of the view of the maps. Now, if we come back to the United States, a lot of students are going to obviously make the connection between California, lots of earthquakes, but then they're also going to see this cluster here in the middle of the United States. So if we zoom in on this, you'll notice that we have quite a bit of earthquake activity happening in Oklahoma, and some of them are various magnitudes. But when you're looking at the satellite map here, you can see kind of where they're at, kind of in the northern part of Oklahoma. But you could also have a discussion with your students if there's any type of political connection with having this many earthquakes in Oklahoma. You could also have a discussion about, is this common? Has Oklahoma always had this many earthquakes? Now, I just watched a special this past weekend on 60 Minutes talking about the increased activity of earthquakes in Oklahoma. And one of the things that I found interesting was they talked about how the state of Kansas had changed some of their regulations on some of the things that are causing different earthquake activity in Oklahoma. So if I was to switch back here to the base map, all right, so notice that we have a line here, the dotted line or the dashed line is between the state of Kansas and the state of Oklahoma. So you could ask your students, you've got kind of this cluster of earthquakes happening in the northern part of Oklahoma, and none of these earthquakes are based in the state of Kansas. So you could get into some pretty interesting discussions and kind of research starters to see if there's a reason why maybe Oklahoma is having quite a few earthquakes. and the state of Kansas is not.
So the map that we just made is one layer. You could expand this out in a lot of different ways. We did one particular layer. What if your students did this for several weeks in a row? They could make each of the layers a different week. You could use different colors. There's a lot of different things you could do with your students if you wanted to make this a broader assignment. That's a wrap for this week's vlog. Thanks for watching. You can always check out past episodes at historygeekteacher.com. I also have my contact information there if you'd like to ask me a question. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. This is Eric Langhorst signing off for the History Geek Teacher vlog. And don't forget, history is so much more than just a bunch of boring old dead guys. Until next time, see you. This episode's thrift store find is a classic Risk game from the late 1960s. This was, I believe, $2.99 and is in excellent condition. This is one of the older models, and it came in great condition. Counted all the pieces, all the cards. The instructions are still there. Just a great find. So that is this week's thrift store find. It's kind of fun to play the old models. Kind of neat to play on a game from the 1960s, and it just kind of makes it a little bit more nostalgic and a little bit more exciting. So this is this week's thrift store find.